This video was sponsored by Kurtzpel. How's it going, everybody? Too spooky here. And it's finally time for the next One Piece Top 10. This one in particular is one that many of you have been wanting for a very long time. That being a list where we count down the top 10 best devil fruits in the series. As always, before we get started, there's a few things you need to keep in mind regarding the format of this list. First off, in this video, to determine the best of the best when it comes to these devil fruits, we are of course allowing all categories, while also focusing on certain criteria. That criteria is as follows. We will be looking at the devil fruit's various abilities, which includes everything we've seen with the fruit's current user, along with things I believe it could potentially do to make it even better. The things that I'm looking for in particular are devil fruits that contain multiple abilities that can be used for various situations, or abilities that contain an immense amount of power, to the point where that ability can easily take down even the strongest of enemies. Obviously, each devil fruit that I present will have different characteristics, but the 10 I've chosen as the best fall into this criteria in one way or another. I will only be considering devil fruits that are canon within the One Piece manga, so no filler whatsoever. The devil fruit user is also considered when choosing a devil fruit, as the way a person uses these powers can really bring out the true potential of these abilities. However, a good user is not necessary for a fruit to be one of the best. So while the devil fruit user is a factor, they are not the sole reason I'm picking some of these fruits. You should also be warned that my pronunciation is god-awful, so I'm likely going to mispronounce multiple things throughout the video. There will be spoilers for both anime and manga, and the final thing you need to keep in mind is that this list is of course my own personal opinion. And for that reason, there's a pretty good chance that you won't agree with parts or even the entirety of my list. However, I will be backing up each of my choices with facts and arguments to at least help you understand why I placed each fruit where I did. But with all that out of the way, be sure to smack that like button, or I will find you. Anyway, let's begin. First, we're going to start off with a few honorable mentions. Because there are just so many devil fruits in One Piece at this point, there's obviously some extremely good ones that unfortunately just couldn't make the cut. Originally for this portion of the video, I intended to dedicate quite a bit of time to explaining a bunch of honorable mentions and why they couldn't make the cut. However, instead, I decided I'm going to show some text to save us all some time. So if you don't care about honorable mentions, you can go ahead and just skip this portion. Otherwise, feel free to take a second and pause the video to read my explanations for each fruit that will not be appearing in this video, even though these fruits were worthy contenders for making it onto the list. Now with those honorable mentions out of the way, let's have a quick word from our sponsor before we get to the actual list. That sponsor being Kurtzpel. Kurtzpel is an anime-inspired third-person action MMO battle game that will be officially releasing very soon. In fact, as of April 30th, it's now officially in its early access period for everyone to try out. Graphically, it's of course highly inspired by anime art styles with cel-shaded graphics, meaning that it doesn't put a huge strain on your PC while you play, all while still looking smooth, crisp, and detailed. You start out by creating your own character with quite a few different options, which I had a lot of fun playing around with, and then you get thrust into the Kurtzpel world, where you can participate in story-based PvM missions by yourself or with other players, along with extensive PvP, including straight-up battles or even team PvP like Capture the Flag. Like I mentioned before, the game is officially in its early access period, so it's now accessible for everyone within North and South America to play, with June and July being the releases for Europe and Asia. If you want to check out Kurtzpel, we'll be sure to follow the link down in the description, which will take you directly to the game's Steam page. And a special thank you to them once again for making this video possible. Now, without any more delay, let's get to the actual top 10. Number 10. The Bari no Mi, or Barrier fruit. This devil fruit was consumed by Bartolomeo. This devil fruit is a paramecia type that allows the user to create indestructible barriers of varying shapes and sizes simply by crossing his fingers. From every instance we've seen, these barriers have in fact been indestructible. And until we see otherwise, I think it's safe to keep that assumption. I've already made an entire video going over this fruit's abilities along with what they potentially could do, so if you're interested in my entire opinion on this one, well, feel free to check out that card in the top right hand corner of the screen, but I'll go over my main points here regardless. At first glance, this devil fruit probably isn't one that most of you would dub one of the 10 best in the series, but just hear me out here. So just with its standard usage, you can create large indestructible barriers to protect you from any attacks, which also includes creating a spherical barrier that can trap you inside, meaning that you could also protect yourself from things like harmful gases. But in addition to that, you can propel these barriers forward with great force at people as a weapon. You can use these barriers to squash people, along with morph these barriers into many different shapes. So essentially, my main reason for believing this one is one of the best is because it's basically the ultimate defensive ability no matter how you look at it. That being said, that alone is not enough for me to believe this belongs in the top 10. Instead, I believe the true potential of this ability comes from the ability to morph these barriers into different shapes. I talked in depth about this in my video about the Bari no Mi, but basically I believe this devil fruit could be so much more deadly if the user could morph the barriers into sharp objects, which is something we haven't seen Bartolomeo do just yet. Now, it's certainly possible that this ability can't be used to create sharp objects, in which case this fruit wouldn't actually be worthy of the top 10. But this theory has not been confirmed nor denied. So if it could, this devil fruit could be borderline unstoppable. You already have a massive shield that can protect you from anything, and I mean anything. But if you equip that shield with large spikes, that shield becomes an unstoppable weapon. You could propel it into people with great force in the form of a barrier crash, skewering them upon impact, or even create things like a barrier sword, which could even go up against the world's greatest swordsman, assuming that you also had the sword skill to back it up. And these ideas are just scratching the surface of how many deadly objects you could create with these barriers. Then you also include the fact that these barriers can be manifested invisible, meaning your opponent wouldn't even see these attacks coming. 1 second, you're just charging your opponent, and the next thing you know, an invisible spiked wall crashes into you with full force. And considering how large these barriers could be, Bartolomeo could essentially take out an entire army of individuals all by himself, possibly even with a single attack. In addition to that, if he was able to meticulously craft these barriers, he could also create something like an indestructible barrier mech, and just go around beating the shit out of people with no threat to the user's own body because nobody can break through the barriers. So it's essentially like indestructible armor with weapons on it that are also indestructible. So basically, this devil fruit is already the ultimate defense, but with enough creativity, I believe this devil fruit could also be the ultimate offense. And for that reason, I believe it more than deserves to be on this list. Number 9. The Mochi no Mi, or Mochi fruit. This devil fruit was consumed by Charlotte Katakuri. This devil fruit allows the user to create, control, and transform their body into mochi, which is essentially a very sticky, sweet paste. This devil fruit is a special paramecia, even though it has the general characteristics of a Logia. In general, this devil fruit would probably be overlooked, very similar to Luffy's devil fruit. However, because of how creative Katakuri is with this devil fruit, it's actually a lot better than you might expect. I won't be going over everything because this fruit can do a lot, but some of the things to note are as follows. The sticky aspect of the mochi is great for slowing down or even trapping enemies, to the point where you could just straight up suffocate them in a pile of mochi. The thick liquid form of mochi is great for mimicking almost anything, including weapons or even an enemy's physical abilities, such as copying Luffy's Gear 3rd techniques or his Gum Gum Gatling techniques, meaning this mochi could be used in ways to directly counter an enemy's attack, just from the user viewing their attack once, giving it a wide variety of potential offensive techniques, many of which we haven't even began to think of yet. These attacks can also be imbued and compressed with haki, making them even stronger. Additionally, Katakuri can do things like compress his Mochi to the point where it literally explodes, sending a flaming Mochi fist at his opponent with great speed and force. Because the user's body is also made of Mochi, this allows them to turn into Mochi to avoid attacks. Katakuri's advanced observation haki, which allowed him to see into the future, made this particular ability even more impressive, but at its base level, it's still a great way to avoid attacks in general. If all that wasn't enough, this fruit also has an awakening, allowing Katakuri to transform his environment into Mochi as well, which therefore allows him to control that Mochi outside of his body for numerous techniques. One potential technique I feel the user could do with this awakening would be making the ground underneath their opponent Mochi, and using that Mochi to pull them into the ground. Now, I don't know if awakened users have the ability to just transform the environment back to normal, but if you could, then you've successfully trapped that enemy underneath the ground without any oxygen or anything. Or if that's not possible, you just keep them stuck within the Mochi until they eventually suffocate. And this is also just scratching the surface with possibilities, because with the awakening and just its normal abilities, this fruit is probably one of the most versatile we've ever seen. So without going any further, my main reason for placing this devil fruit on the list is because of how well-rounded its abilities are. It can attack and defend in numerous different ways at both close and long distances, and with the addition of that awakening, it makes the offensive and defensive abilities even better, making it one of the most versatile devil fruits out there. And I can't see very many situations where other devil fruits would be able to take this one down. And in a battle for the devil fruits that are the absolute best, the fruits that can come out on top in the most situations are generally the ones that deserve the title. So because of how useful, versatile, and powerful this devil fruit can be in the majority of situations, I believe it deserves a spot in the top 10 of the very best. Coming in at number 9. Number 8. The Ito Ito no Mi, or String Fruit. This devil fruit was consumed by Don Quixote Doflamingo. This devil fruit is a paramecia type that allows the user to create and manipulate strings. As I'm sure you're all aware, this devil fruit has a wide variety of uses, and if I were to cover them all similar to the previous fruit, we'd be stuck on this one for over 20 minutes. By themselves, the strings can be used for various attacks, including string bullets, string whips, gigantic nets, you name it. And these strings were shown to be capable of cutting through almost anything they came across, aside from a few objects like very powerful swords and sea stone or haki. Speaking of haki, all of these string attacks can also be imbued with haki to make them even more powerful. And the fact that these strings are also so thin makes them hard to see during a fight, unless you're specifically looking for them. These strings can also be used for a wide variety of defensive or tactical uses. For instance, we have Doflamingo's ability to fly by attaching his strings to clouds or nearby buildings. The ability to make and control an entire identical clone of himself, which also has the ability to use string attacks. The ability to heal his own injuries by using his strings to hold himself together, such as holding his organs in place so that they can heal after taking a deadly internal attack. And he also has the ability to control multiple other people at once by attaching his strings to their spines. This ability alone was able to provide Doflamingo the means to take over an entire country overnight. And once these strings are attached, he basically has full control over that person's body no matter what. If that wasn't enough, we also have the birdcage, which is made up of such powerful strings that anyone, and I mean anyone trapped behind the strings, will eventually be cut to shreds. Even a Navy admiral was hopeless against the strings of the birdcage all by himself, implying that these strings cannot be destroyed or stopped unless you take out Doflamingo himself. And if all that weren't enough, this devil fruit is also awakened, allowing Doflamingo to transform his surroundings into large masses of strings for him to control, which he can also imbue with haki to make them even stronger than they already are. So basically my point with this one would be the fact that it's already extremely useful offensively, defensively, and tactically, similar to the Mochi Mochi no Mi. However, this one just happens to offer a bit more in terms of its overall versatility. My best examples to support that being the birdcage, the ability to control a string clone, along with just controlling other people, and the ability to fly around on these strings from above. These abilities give Doflamingo the added edge in most fights where he would otherwise be at a disadvantage. damage. If his opponent doesn't know he can control people, they won't be expecting him to target their necks. And if Doflamingo is able to hit his target, his enemy is now completely under his control, which is basically game over. If that fails, he can also create a clone of himself to fight instead, working together with his clone to take an enemy down, or as his worst case scenario, he could just fly up into the sky and unleash the birdcage. If his opponent doesn't have any way to fly up there and stop him, or have any sort of projectiles to shoot him down, they're just straight up f***ed. And that's not even bringing into consideration the awakened abilities, which just makes everything that much more impossible to deal with. So no matter how you look at it, this Devil Fruit is one of the best out there. It can already be extremely deadly with normal attacks, considering the strings are basically indestructible in most cases, but with all the added abilities, it just makes this Devil Fruit something to be truly feared. Number 7. The Gura no Mi, or Tremor Fruit. This Devil Fruit was originally consumed by Whitebeard, but has since been stolen by Blackbeard. This Devil Fruit is a Paramecia type that gives its user the ability to create massive shockwaves that can travel through the air, ground, or sea, or essentially through any medium. This Devil Fruit is pretty straightforward in the fact that it's been said to have the ability to destroy the world. And from the short glimpse of its abilities that we were given at Marineford, this seems to be a factual statement, as we saw that Whitebeard was able to grab and shift the air, which caused an entire island to basically be destroyed. If you can cause that much destruction by just shifting around the air a little bit, I think it's safe to assume that this fruit could cause even more damage than what we've already seen, to the point where it could indeed destroy the entire world. So basically my sole reason for putting this one on the list is because of how devastatingly powerful this Devil Fruit is. I'd even argue it's probably the strongest Devil Fruit we've seen thus far in terms of causing pure destruction. But unfortunately, although it is very powerful, its downfalls prevent it from being any higher than 7 on our list of the best. Sure, it has an insane amount of power behind it, which is enough to make the list, but the fact of the matter is, this fruit could end up killing both friend and foe alike because of how unpredictable its attacks are, even going as far to potentially harm the user themselves if they aren't careful, essentially meaning that this one is the ultimate double-edged sword. Obviously, you can create smaller or even concentrated tremors to direct the damage, but if you really needed to go all out, it could turn into quite the disaster fairly quickly. So because this Devil Fruit has the ability to destroy the world itself, but with a lot of risk behind it, it will remain here at number 7 of the best Devil Fruits. Number 6. The Yami no Mi, or Dark Fruit. This Devil Fruit was consumed by Blackbeard. This Devil Fruit is a Logia type that allows its user to create, control, and potentially transform into darkness itself, including the additional ability to control the properties of gravity. Now, as a little disclaimer, there is another Devil Fruit that can control the properties of gravity, that fruit being Fujitora's. And while Fujitora's Devil Fruit is a very powerful and useful one, it will not be featured on this list because it can only control gravity, while the Yami no Mi can control gravity along with having a wide variety of other useful abilities to accompany it. So while Fujitora's Devil Fruit is the superior of the two when it comes to just gravity-related abilities, and that one is also extremely good in my opinion, the fact that the Yami no Mi has other abilities in addition to gravity is what makes it vastly superior in my opinion. When it comes to what exactly this gravity power consists of, Blackbeard has demonstrated it numerous times by using the gravity power to pull people towards him. The only issue with this is that the gravity pull isn't extremely fast, so if his opponent has enough time to react, they can counterattack before they actually reach Blackbeard. However, one thing to note is that this gravity is absolute, so if Blackbeard is pulling you towards him, you cannot escape that gravitational pull, but you can counterattack before you actually reach Blackbeard himself. That being said, if Blackbeard is successful in pulling them towards him, his Devil Fruit has the added ability of nullifying Devil Fruit powers with the darkness. So upon being grabbed by Blackbeard's hand, he is free to attack them with all his might, bypassing any abilities his opponent might have regardless of what Devil Fruit type they are, and preventing them from using any abilities while they are in contact with him, which is most useful against Logia types who can't normally be hit. However, now that hockey is a thing and everyone and their mother has it, Logia fruits are just kind of a joke in general these days. In addition to that, the user can also spread his darkness within a large area, which will suck anything it touches into an empty void, similar to a black hole. This also includes people, by the way. Blackbeard can later release anything that he sucked up previously as an attack by itself. So already this fruit sounds very powerful. Which it is, to the point where you'd think it should be a little bit higher on the list, in fact. However, with all those great and powerful abilities, it does have a few drawbacks which prevent it from going any further. The main drawback being that the darkness in question sucks everything in. And for that reason, it also sucks in any attacks that hit the user, to the point where it causes significantly more damage to the user than the same attack would to any other person. Now you'd think Blackbeard could just turn into darkness like any other Logia and dodge that attack, but as far as we've seen, because the darkness sucks everything in like we just said, this simply is not possible. And instead Blackbeard is really only able to coat himself in darkness rather than actually turn into it. But this is still something that could be possible depending on the circumstances, but with the knowledge we already have, this makes it a bit lacking compared to the other Logia types. Additionally, to actually nullify a Devil Fruit user's abilities, he has to remain in contact with them the entire time. So unless he can get close to the enemy or bring them in contact with him, he's susceptible to taking some serious hits. With all that knowledge about its strengths and weaknesses, I feel most of you are probably understanding of why I put it where I did on the list. However, one thing I also need to mention is the theory that this Devil Fruit might be the reason Blackbeard was able to gain the power of a second Devil Fruit. There's already a ton of theories out there about how Blackbeard was able to do this, such as the Cerberus theory, the theory about his rings, etc. But it's also possible that the Yami Yami no Mi itself is what made this possible. Because it sucks everything in, it's also possible it could suck in another Devil Fruit, allowing the user the ability to use that fruit as well. If that does end up being the case, when this mystery is finally solved within the manga, this Devil Fruit would automatically skip from number 6 where it sits right now, all the way up to number 1 as the very best Devil Fruit out there. It's already insanely useful and insanely strong, but if it also has the ability to absorb other Devil Fruit powers, allowing the user to have those other abilities, this fruit is easily the best one out there, no contest. But because that's just a theory for now, it will remain here at number 6. But depending on the outcome of that mystery, the Yami Yami no Mi could have the potential to be number 1. Number 5. The Hobi Hobi no Mi, or Hobby Hobby fruit. This Devil Fruit was consumed by sugar. This Devil Fruit is a paramecia type that allows the user to turn people into toys simply by touching them, with the added effect of erasing that person from everyone's memories as if they never existed. This fruit also has the additional effect of granting the user eternal youth, or essentially keeping their physical body the same age as when they consumed the fruit. So by that short description right there, this one kinda speaks for itself. But to be thorough with my explanations and opinions, this one is without a doubt one of the most broken abilities in the series. You touch someone, they become a toy. They essentially no longer exist. It's absolute. This ability alone is enough to take down anyone, and I mean anyone within the One Piece world, including the Yonko, the admirals, even the former Pirate King himself would be helpless against this ability. And because toys are naturally much weaker than a person, and are therefore much easier to destroy, you could simply turn anyone into a toy and then just break them, killing them in the process. This means that this ability alone could take down anyone, which is more than enough for it to be considered one of the best. Another thing to note would be that the user of this fruit is also able to give the transformed toy a contract, essentially giving them a set of rules that they must follow no matter what, which is also absolute once the contract has been given. So you could basically transform someone and then give them a contract like, you must obey all of my commands, and you must allow me to kill you whenever I want, which the toy will have no choice but to submit to all their orders, including its own death, because these toys cannot go against whatever this contract is. The only catch with this being that the user needs to give the contract as soon as they transform them into a toy. So if the toy was somehow able to escape before they gave the contract, they are essentially scot-free. But then they're still just a toy, and you really can't do much except, you know, be a toy. With such a broken ability like this one, some of you might even be questioning how this Devil Fruit isn't number 1, or higher up than just 5 for that matter. And while normally the ability of this one could be enough to make it to at least the top 3, it unfortunately has a few extreme drawbacks. The first being the Eternal Youth, which could either be an immense blessing or a massive curse, depending on what age you consumed the fruit. Sugar, for instance, ate the fruit when she was only 10 years old, meaning that she will forever physically be 10 years old, even when she's 100. And while being 10 years old has an advantage of its own, as most people wouldn't expect a 10-year-old child as their enemy, this unfortunately limits Sugar's physical abilities for the rest of her life, and because of that, she could be bested in physical combat by basically any competent fighter, as most people out there could beat the life out of a 10-year-old pretty easily. However, on the other side of things, if the user were to have eaten this fruit at the ripe age of, let's say, 25 for instance, they would forever be in their physical prime, and therefore could become physically strong for the rest of their life in addition to having an absolutely broken ability, which really would make this fruit even better. However, because this Eternal Youth can be a bit circumstantial, it has an equal chance of being a massive downfall. The real downfall comes from the fact that you need to physically touch the individual with your hands, and only your hands to turn them into a toy. For one, most people aren't going to let an enemy get close enough for you to touch them, especially if they are aware of what your ability does. Secondly, because this ability only works with the touch of your hands, all someone would need to do is chop off both of your hands to stop you forever, as without your hands, you could never turn anyone into a toy again, making this ability worthless other than being forever young. Additionally, if the user gets knocked out, everyone they turned into a toy will go back to normal. But like I said earlier, if you were to simply just turn people into a toy and then kill them immediately, you'd kinda get past that problem. So the bottom line with this one, it is by far the most broken ability we've seen in One Piece. And if this fruit was consumed by someone who was physically strong and at a good age, this devil fruit could easily be borderline unstoppable. But because it could be consumed by anyone at any age, and it can only be used with the touch of your hand, it unfortunately has some drawbacks that I just cannot overlook. Especially when a lot of devil fruits out there deal specifically with long-range abilities that could prevent the user of this fruit from ever getting close enough to transform them into a toy. Either way though, this fruit is easily one of the best ones out there no matter how you look at it, so it will come in at the middle of our list at number 5. Number 4. The Nikyu no Mi, or Pawpaw fruit. This devil fruit was consumed by Bartholomew Kuma. This devil fruit is a paramecia type that allows the user to essentially repel anything that they touch, which is done with the paw prints on the user's hands. When I say repel basically anything, I mean anything. From the air itself, any oncoming attacks including objects like swords, and even things like the physical sensation of pain itself. So it's safe to say this devil fruit can do a lot of things that we likely haven't even seen yet. Like, for instance, if given the chance, this devil fruit could potentially be able to repel other physical sensations, like going up to somebody and repelling their sensation of touch, taste, smell, sound, etc. Or maybe it could go as far to have the potential to repel life itself, basically being able to repel an enemy's life right out of their body upon contact. Just something to consider, but we will not be taking that as fact. But if that were possible, this fruit could easily be in the top 3. But based on what we have actually seen, these paws are able to already stop and repel any attack, regardless of what it is, so long as the attack touches the paws. So automatically this fruit has an absolute defense. But because this defensive area is limited to the paws on the user's hands, if he isn't fast enough to block an attack with the paws, he'd still take the attack head on. Luckily for Kuma in particular, his cyborg body helps him tank any attack he fails to block, but for any other potential user of this fruit, that's not exactly an option. But at least we know with physical enhancement this weakness can be somewhat overcome. But in addition to that already great defense, this devil fruit also has an immense amount of power behind it. Like we said, Kuma can repel anything, so the possibilities are already endless, and we could probably sit here all day coming up with devastating possibilities. But just going off what we've actually seen Kuma repel, I already have more than enough to argue his place on this list. First off, his ability to make the air itself a deadly weapon is already extremely impressive. With that alone, he basically always has a lethal weapon at his side, as no matter where he goes, he will always have air at his disposal. But when it comes to the air that he repels it at the speed of light itself, or very close to it, which would be basically impossible for almost anyone to dodge. And as we saw, once this air actually strikes somebody, the shockwave it creates is enough to take out even some of the strongest enemies in a single hit. He can also repel the air in a different way, and this technique is called the Ursus shock. By compressing a great amount of air down into a single air paw, once that paw eventually makes contact, the air quickly decompresses and creates a shockwave that's large enough to cover the entirety of Thriller Bark, with a force strong enough to take out an enemy like Ors Jr. in a single hit. Essentially meaning he's already packing a miniature nuke with just the air alone. The only downfall with this technique is that it takes a little bit of time to actually prepare it. We could theorize other things Kuma could propel for attacks, but the air itself is really all you need to make this one of the best devil fruits out there. The other possibilities are just a huge bonus at this point. If that wasn't enough to prove my point, Kuma can also use this ability to propel himself, to the point where it appears as though he's teleporting from place to place, which is because he repels himself so quickly. He can also repel other people, by sending them to any location of his choosing simply by touching them, and this repelling occurs over the course of 3 days and 3 nights. So if Kuma really wanted, he could simply repel or teleport himself to an enemy, and then repel that enemy directly into the furthest reaches of the ocean, leaving them to drown all alone or get eaten by a sea king or something. So this devil fruit is fast, it's very strong, and it can block any attack, and it can also just yeet people out of the way at any time, making this fruit easily one of the strongest and most versatile. The only real downfall of this fruit is the fact that the user can only repel things from the paws on his hands, meaning that similar to the Hobi Hobi no Mi, if you were to cut off his hand somehow, this power would be useless. But unlike the Hobi Hobi no Mi, this fruit has a lot more potential abilities, a lot of which are at a longer range, which is why I had to place this one above it, even if it was a bit hard for me to do considering how broken the Hobi Hobi no Mi is. Even so, I do believe the Nikyu no Mi is one of the most dangerous and versatile fruits out there, with a ton of different abilities and potential weapons it can use to take down even the most powerful of enemies out there, making it without a doubt one of the best devil fruits in the series, coming in at number 4. Number 3. The Ope Ope no Mi, or Op Op fruit. This devil fruit was consumed by Trafalgar D. Waterlaw. This devil fruit allows the user to create a spherical area of varying distances, dubbed a room. Within this room, the user essentially has the ability to control the placement, alteration, and orientation of anything or anyone within that room. To give some examples of what I mean, the user can chop up people's bodies and rearrange them in any way he pleases, which includes removing organs such as the heart, along with attaching people to various objects. The user can switch people's personalities, switch items with another to make them appear as if they are teleporting, essentially use telepathy to move objects around, along with creating things like energy blades and extremely high voltage shocks, all while within this room of course. So plain and simple, this fruit gives the user the ability to surgically operate on anything trapped within this room, including the user's own body. As a little background, this fruit is said to be worth at least 5 billion berries, as that is what the Marines were willing to pay to get their hands on it. As this fruit is essentially a thing of miracles, as in the past, a high-profile doctor who had this fruit's abilities was capable of performing miraculous surgeries that cured some diseases that were dubbed uncurable, among other things. So with a power like that, this fruit could obviously be used for some not so honorable things, such as removing the hearts of 100 pirates. Regardless though, it's also been mentioned that this devil fruit's full potential can only be utilized if the user has some sort of medical knowledge. The more, the better. For that reason, if the user was lacking medical knowledge, this would be considered a significant drawback. Other drawbacks from this fruit include the fact that using this devil fruit's power for a long period of time will severely deplete the user's stamina. And if the user were to use an extremely large room for an extended period of time, it could even affect the user's own lifespan. so the user needs to be somewhat cautious when it comes to using this ability rather frequently. This fruit also has a miracle surgery of sorts, where it can grant another individual eternal life, but at the cost of the user's own life. So as a last resort, the user of this fruit could make an ally immortal essentially, but because it ends up killing the user in the process, I guess I'd still consider it a drawback, even though, it could be useful. Truth be told though, the reason this devil fruit is so high up on the list is simply due to the sheer number of things it can do, from its core abilities to the numerous techniques that Law can use within the room. For instance, his Gamma Knife is powerful enough to destroy someone's internal organs with a single attack. But with teleportation, cutting a person in pieces, switching personalities, you name it, this fruit has so many possibilities within that room to best their opponent, many of which we probably haven't even seen before. This fruit can be used for offensive, defensive, and tactical techniques, many in each category, making it one of the most well-rounded already. But when you consider how useful some of these abilities are, it just makes the fruit just that much more impressive. And since the room itself can be a variety of different sizes, from pretty small to freaking huge, you could come up with a wide variety of strategies to utilize that space. Like for instance, cutting an entire mountain in half. Or, cutting up an entire squad of Marines and turning them into Alabama incest kids. The possibilities are endless. Especially for a doctor, as this fruit can also be used as a way to heal anybody, including yourself, making it just that much more versatile in my opinion, because if you get wrecked, you just fix yourself up, you're good to go. So because this fruit is essentially one of the best when it comes to everything it's capable of, and everything it could be capable of, I have no choice but to recognize this fruit as one of the best, as the miracle fruit as it's known, putting it in the top 3, in fact. Number 2. For this one, we have our first and only tie. That being between the Pika Pika no Mi or Glint Glint fruit and the Goro Goro no Mi or Rumble Rumble fruit. Each of these fruits have an extensive list of abilities that we could spend a while going into, but I'll try to keep this one somewhat shorter since we've already spent so much time on some of the others. But basically, the Pika Pika no Mi is a Logia type devil fruit that allows the user to create, control, and transform into light itself. And the Goro Goro no Mi is also a Logia type devil fruit that allows the user to create, control, and transform into lightning. I was recently on a podcast where we ended up having to put these two fruits against each other, and it really got me thinking as to which of these two fruits is actually the superior. Personally, my instincts lean towards the Pika Pika no Mi, but at the end of the day, these two devil fruits are pretty neck and neck in a lot of ways, which is why I decided upon a tie for the number 2 spot. My main reason for this is because both of these devil fruits are as fast and powerful as they come. Enel can travel at the speed of lightning, which is about 220 million miles per hour, while Kizaru can travel at the speed of light, which is 670,616,629 miles per hour. So based on that assumption, the Pika Pika no Mi is the faster of the two and can therefore pack more of a punch with the force behind each of his attacks, but being 1/3 the speed of light with lightning is not something that should be pushed aside by any means. In fact, I think the Goro Goro no Mi makes up for its lack of speed, even though saying lack of speed when it's that fast is kinda ridiculous. But it makes up for that with its various other abilities, such as being able to electrocute people upon contact, merge with solid matter, and even use his voltage to jumpstart his heart, among other things. Where on the contrary, the Pika Pika no Mi is made up of almost exclusively offensive and defensive abilities. So in that sense, I feel the two of them kinda even out. And when it comes to pure destructive power, I feel like both of them are also quite equal. Kizaru can shoot lasers that burn right through people upon contact, or he can punch or kick people at the speed of light, which theoretically packs over 31 sextillion pounds of force. That's a lot of frickin' zeros, boys. And he can also create a freaking lightsaber. If, 31 sextillion pounds of force was not enough to convince you. Whereas Enel is able to strike people with lightning at the voltage of his choosing, the maximum of which is 200 million volts, which would basically fry any average person to ash in a matter of seconds. Additionally, he can also decide upon the size of a lightning bolt and essentially strike you from anywhere within the size of an entire island. Obviously, the force from a light speed kick and 200 million volts would eradicate anybody, but of course, this is anime, so the physics behind these attacks don't necessarily carry over. But the bottom line with both of these devil fruits is that they are as fast as they come, and also each having their own unique properties. The Goro Goro no Mi having a bit more to offer with versatility, but at the end of the day, both of these fruits have the potential to be the fastest devil fruits out there, in addition to each having their own immensely powerful and destructive techniques. And for that reason, I believe the two of them are equal in their own ways, and both of them have the potential to be not only some of the most powerful devil fruits, but also some of the best devil fruits in the series. Now the moment that you've all been waiting for. Number 1. The Tori no Mi Model Phoenix. This devil fruit was consumed by Marco. This devil fruit is a mythical Zoan type that allows the user to transform into a phoenix. Now, I feel like this may be considered a controversial pick, especially for number 1, but you'll just have to hear me out on this one. In general, I feel like most Zoan fruits kinda get a bad rap. You can transform into your respective animal or in between, and you get a strength boost. For most of them, that's as far as it goes. The ancient and mythical Zoans, however, have some very unique abilities to accompany them. But out of all the mythical and ancient Zoans we've seen thus far, the Phoenix fruit is by far the best. My main reason for believing this is because this is the only devil fruit we've seen thus far throughout the entire series that has the characteristics of every single devil fruit type. Let me explain. For the Zoan category, Marco can of course transform into a phoenix, or transform parts of his body into a phoenix, which includes granting him a strength boost, the ability to fly, and also sharp talons. The Phoenix fruit also allows Marco to generate blue flames similar to a Logia, which also grants him the properties of regeneration and healing like a Paramecia. So right off the bat, it already has Zoan, Paramecia, and Logia-like abilities. But these blue flames aren't exactly hot. However, they are able to go up against some of the hottest elements on equal footing, such as Sakazuki's Magma or Kizaru's Light. In general though, these blue flames allow Marco to just straight up regenerate any wounds that he receives, regardless of what they are. However, there is a limit to how much he is able to regenerate, though we've never actually seen him hit this limit, meaning it's likely after a lot of regenerating. Because he can regenerate like this, the user is also able to take an immense amount of damage and come back like nothing happened. Even being able to let attacks pass right through his body like a Logia, because his body heals so quickly to the point where it really doesn't even affect him letting those attacks pass through. Examples of this happening were regular bullets or even with Kizaru's lasers. So even some of the most destructive elements are no match for these flames. Additionally, because these flames have regenerative abilities, the user is also able to use them to heal others. So the point I'm trying to make with all this is that this devil fruit is easily the best one, simply because of its wide range of abilities and characteristics, including all 3 devil fruit types in one. It can go up against some of the most destructive fruits like the Magu Magu no Mi and Pika Pika no Mi and come out unfazed, while other characters with powerful fruits were straight up killed in comparison. But on top of all that, the fruit also grants its user the ability to fly, giving its user increased mobility. All the while, this devil fruit doesn't seem to have a single weakness or drawback, aside from its regeneration having a limit, which we've never even seen it reach before. And if we want to include theories to make it even better than it already is, we can also assume that perhaps upon death itself, the user would be reborn through the ashes, as Phoenix are known to be reborn from ashes once they die, meaning this fruit could possibly even cheat death itself. We've talked about a lot of great fruits today, and deciding which make the cut and which don't was already hard enough. But one thing I was sure of the entire time is that this fruit is truly the best one we've seen thus far. And hopefully my arguments for that statement have been enough to at least make you understand why I think that way, even if you don't necessarily agree. So with that, the Tori no Mi Model Phoenix is my number 1 pick for the best devil fruit in One Piece. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video today, and hopefully you agreed with my list, or at least understood where I was coming from. Obviously, we all have our own opinions, but I would love to hear yours. Be sure to comment what your list would be and why in the comments down below. Also be sure to smack that like button to show me you want more of these top 10s, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. It's going to be a hot minute before the next One Piece related one, because there's some other top 10s related to other anime that I've been putting off for a while that I want to get to next. But you can bet your ass that there will be more One Piece top 10s in the future. And with that, be sure to let me know which type of top 10s you would like to see next. Follow me on Twitter at 2SpookyTube to keep up with the channel, follow me on Twitch at 2Spookster to hang out in some streams. And before we go, I just wanted to thank you all so much from the very bottom of my heart for 350,000 subscribers. Your guys' support means everything to me, and I promise you I'm eternally grateful for this opportunity that you've given me. I truly hope you all enjoy what I've got in store for the future. Thanks once again to Kurtzpel for sponsoring this video. If you guys are looking for a new and fun game to play, I highly recommend you follow that top link in the description and check it out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time with a new video.